Hey everyone, welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Ana Kasparian, and we have two studs on the panel today. I'm going to get right to it and introduce those studs. In fact, we have a brand new panelist on the show. You guys have never seen him before, but he is actually the host of At Hollywood. His name is Charlie Berens, and he's in for a treat today because I'm going to ask him some pretty personal and embarrassing questions.
Very personal and embarrassing. I appreciate that.
Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we got to balance out the new with someone that you guys are familiar with. Andy Riesmeyer returns. He's the host of Dweebcast on Aura TV. You guys can check that out. And I'm loving the suit, or at least the jacket. It looks good.
I appreciate it.
I'm telling you, two studs. What am I going to do with this panel? It's too much going on. All right, so we're going to talk about a lot of interesting stories today, including one founder of a revenge porn website who is now paying the consequences of extortion. Also, what the hell is an air shepherd, and how is it going to help animals that could go extinct in the next 10 years? Mindy Kaling's brother is in the middle of a lot of controversy because of something he did when he tried to get into college. We'll give you the details on that. France bans a particular type of model, and also scientists say that psychedelic drugs are not bad, they're actually quite good for you. We'll give you the details on that. But first, let's get started with a story that I feel very passionately about: revenge porn and what the consequences could be if you are involved in a website that has it. So, Kevin Bollert is a 27-year-old guy who just got sentenced to a whopping 18 years in prison because he's the founder of a revenge porn website known as YouGotPosted.com. Now, that website no longer exists because apparently it was involved in some criminal activity. What Bollert would do is he would somehow access nude pictures or videos of women, and then he would utilize those images as revenge porn on his website, but he would also post personal information about the women along with the images. So people who went to the website could easily harass the women by calling them, finding where they lived, finding what their social media sites were. It was a complete and utter disaster. Now, the part that got him into a lot of trouble is that women, of course, had their lives ruined as a result of this, so they would contact him and beg him to take those pictures down. Well, guess what he did? He would direct them to a different website that he was a founder of, something known as ChangeMyReputation.com, and then he would extort them. He would ask for between $250 and $350 in order for him to take the pictures down. So that's essentially what got him into a lot of trouble. If you're wondering how much money he made from that website, well, from ad revenue, he apparently made about $900 a month. And from the amount of money that women had paid him to take the images down, he made $30,000. So again, he got sentenced to 18 years behind bars because of what he did. And he did face 6 counts of extortion and 21 counts of identity theft. He was found guilty of all charges. Now, I want to know what you guys think about this. It's interesting to have two guys on the panel talk about something like revenge porn. I think the audience is pretty clear on what I think. But Andy, let me start with you. Make your point.
Well, I think as a guy or as a human being, it's obviously, this is like really disgusting, you know, and this dude's a total creep. He not only, extorted people out of trying to get the pictures down, but also just to sort of create an environment where you could put someone's photos up, but then also put their information, their details, their Facebook pages. It's just like, somebody like this should absolutely be behind bars. I mean, revenge porn is already on its face really gross, you know, for everybody. It's just like a super unethical, illegal. The way that he just sort of even took it to the next level, I think, is just unbelievably
It's amazing how he could make a despicable act even more
worse.
Despicable. And by the way, revenge porn is not necessarily illegal in all states. So it really varies based on where you live. So in California, they have made revenge porn illegal, but in the vast majority of states in the U.S., it's still legal. And I think that the tides are changing when it comes to that issue, thankfully. But I do want to know what you think, Charlie.
Well, I think, you know, whatever you do in life, you're going to spend a lot of time doing it, whether, you know, it's working at a movie theater or hosting a show or doing revenge porn. And he spent so much time that he found a business, a $30,000 plus business, in doing it, and I just think now he has 18 years to think about how he could have used his time more wisely. There's no excuse for it, and I think if there's a shame in this whole story, it's that it wasn't more publicized, because I think more people who are doing the same thing need to see that there are real consequences for this.
That's definitely a good point. You know, it's interesting because As despicable as he is and as angry as I am at those who do revenge porn, I have to say that 18 years sounds excessive for the crime that was committed here. When you consider the number of people who have been found guilty of sexual assault or even rape, a lot of them don't even get 18 years. But I'm not a law professor, I'm not a legal expert, so I feel uncomfortable talking about what his sentence should be. But 18 years, I think it's safe to say, is excessive, regardless of how much of a creep this guy is. All right, so here's the personal question for the story. What amount of money would you pay to have the nude pictures taken down of you? It's a little different because you guys are dudes, but I'm very curious. Andy, let me start with you.
I've never, and I think I've said this actually before on the show, I've never been terribly precious about my own body. You know, I don't think I'd pay any money. So sorry, extorters.
You would keep it up there.
I don't really care. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if people really wanted to see that, whatever. I'm not, to me, I'm just, for me personally, I'm sure, there's a lot of people who absolutely don't want that kind of stuff out there, but I'm lucky, and first of all, that I've never taken any photos like that to put them out there, and secondly, that I just don't really care for myself personally.
Charlie, what about you?
I mean, I think it just depends how cold of a day it was on the day of the photo was taken.
Fair enough.
And then I'm willing to pay anywhere between $5 and $6.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's totally different for men because I don't think it's as stigmatized for men. For women, it's definitely stigmatized. And aside from being stigmatized, people are genuinely curious about naked women's bodies. You know what I mean? Everyone wants to see it. So I think that there's more interest in seeing a female's naked body as opposed to a male's naked body. I mean,
they're just better.
It depends who you are. You know what I mean?
I just think they're better.
Well, of course you would think so. All right. Well, I would pay. First of all, there are no naked pictures of me, so anyone who's salivating at the thought of finding a naked picture of me and extorting me, fuck you, it's not gonna happen. But if there were a naked picture of me and it was posted online and I really wanted to get taken down, if I had $10,000, I would pay $10,000 to get it taken down. That's how desperate I would be. That's why I do not mess around with sexting. I don't mess around with filming porno videos or any of that kind of stuff. I just don't trust anyone. I don't care if it's my husband. I'm just not doing it. It will end up in the wrong hands. That's my take. Anyway, we want to know what you guys think. I know that the vast majority of you are male, so you're probably going to agree with our panelists. But if there are any females out there, I especially want to hear from you. How much would you be willing to pay to get those pictures taken down? And also, for the audience members in general, what do you think about this prison sentence? Do you think it's excessive? Do you think it's just about right? We do want to hear from you, so comment in the section below, and we'll see you soon. It's no surprise that there is an issue with poachers going after animals that could be extinct very, very soon. In fact, more than 40,000 elephants and 1,200 rhinos are killed by poachers each year. And experts say that both species could actually be extinct as early as 10 years, which is crazy. Now, rangers typically patrol on foot to ensure that poachers aren't doing this, but of course, their abilities are limited, and so poachers still get to do what they really want to do. And so John Peterson, he's the chairman of the Lindbergh Foundation, created something referred to as Air Shepherd. It's a drone that actually patrols the areas that poachers are known to be in. Now, let's take a quick look at these drones. It's kind of amazing. The aircraft can be flown consistently during high poaching hours, like overnight in areas prone to poaching activity. It actually has infrared cameras and GPS technology in each drone, and they relay data back to a mobile command post. So when the drone spots a potential poacher, the location is sent to park rangers who can respond and arrest the poachers before the animal is actually killed. It's amazing. Now, of course, drones are expensive, which is why this expert has created an Indiegogo page in order to raise money to basically take care of the costs of creating these drones and maintaining them. In fact, he's in the process of raising $500,000 through the fundraising site, and that will implement a one-year program for the drones. So I like this story because oftentimes when we talk about drones on the Young Turks or even on The Point, it's negative coverage because drones have been used for things like signature strikes in the Middle East where there are many casualties, innocent people get killed. They're used for surveillance on innocent citizens such as us. And so there is a downside to drones, but it's good to know that there's also an upside, so I'm happy to report a good story about it. Charlie, what do you think? Make your point.
I think that elephants especially are a keystone species, and in order to stop the poaching, it's a very important thing that happens. It affects it really affects lives in Africa, human lives. That said, in the middle of the night, if you see a poacher, you're not going to go out and confront them necessarily because helicopters are shot down, people on foot are shot down. So if there's a way of doing it on a consistent basis that doesn't involve human lives, I think it's a great thing. That said, I'm sure these poachers are going to get, used to, or they're going to bring their bird guns or something because that's the next step of it. So hopefully they fly high enough and quiet enough. So.
Andy, what about you? Make your point.
I love it, though I always worry about, especially when we talk about drones, the opportunity for it to be compromised and used for a nefarious activity. Though I guess in this scenario, it would just be like spying on animals, which we're already saying that that's the whole point of this, so maybe it's fine. But anytime that there's something that is sort of autonomous, that is long range, that has the ability to be used for surveillance, you always wonder, well, does it have the strongholds in place to keep it from becoming something dangerous? That being said, I'm really happy to hear about this issue because I feel like this is so 90s almost. It's like a throwback. We haven't heard about we haven't heard about like save the elephants for such a long time, and it's just like, oh, okay, good. I mean, it sucks. It's still a problem, but I'm still glad that like it's nice to see something that's a little bit different in terms of like social activism or political activism than what we've sort of been talking about for the past couple of months.
That's such a good perspective on this because when you really think about it, things have gotten much worse when it comes to police brutality, for instance, and so a lot of our focus has shifted to things like that. But it is good to know that there are people out there that are still trying to protect animals, especially those that could go extinct in 10 years. That's insane. Now, here's the personal question for the story. If a drone followed you around all year, what's the worst thing it would catch you do? Andy.
Probably this show, right? No, I say every time I come on here, there's always something that I say that's like really horrible and
we
inappropriate.
Love it.
And like, I always get a lot of shit for it. I don't know. The thing is, it's like I don't know that. I don't really do that much. It probably would be the most boring thing ever. You would see me sitting at home watching reruns of the Golden Girls, and that's probably it.
Okay.
Golden Girls?
Gilmore Girls.
Oh, Gilmore Girls.
No, I'm sorry. I got Dave Rubin on the brain. I got confused. Sorry.
Fair enough. What about you, Charlie?
I mean, most of the inappropriate things I don't, do out in the open. So I don't think although, I mean, there are those late nights where you're out at the bar and you're drinking and there's not a bathroom to be found, and so you do the only natural thing is use God's restroom. That might be it.
That might be it. Okay, you guys are super boring.
The back of
so boring.
I agree with you. I do most of my naughty stuff behind closed doors, and the drone wouldn't see me anyway. But there are two things that I think that the drone would catch me do. Both of them have to do with rage. Road rage. I have really bad road rage, and I try to keep it under control. But if I have my blinker on, indicating that I'm trying to change my lane, and then you purposely speed up because you don't want me to change, I will cut you off. I will cut you off, and there's a possibility that you're gonna rear end me, and if you do that, then you're gonna have to fucking pay for it. Okay? So the drone would probably catch me doing something like that. And then also yesterday, I went to go watch my boyfriend play basketball, and I realized I shouldn't do that because there are always chumps on the sidelines talking shit. And I'm not about that life. Like, I like to be polite, you know what I mean? Like, I'll clap and I'll cheer, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to badmouth the other team. And so last night, there were two guys that were badmouthing my boyfriend's team, and they were being insanely rude about it. And so I got a little testy. And so, yeah, both situations have to do with me getting upset.
Did you throw something? Or
was this specifics?
Yeah.
At one point,
what's testy?
Like I started like mocking them.
Pull out a knife or something?
Well, no. I don't get physically violent, and then at one point, this one guy that was like trying to block my boyfriend, like got really physical with him and like straight out pushed him. And I was like, oh, hell no. And then he called him the F word. Yeah, I was not.
Which one?
You know, not fuck.
Okay.
The other F word.
Wow.
Yeah. Whoa. Anyway, I was not pleased with that game. Anyway, but tell us what you guys think. Tell us what a drone would catch you doing if it followed you around for a year straight. And also, what do you think about this effort in saving wildlife? Do you think it's going to work, or do you think it's problematic? We want to hear from you, so comment in the section below, and we'll talk to you soon. Mindy Kaling's brother has been in the middle of controversy. In fact, he's been dominating headlines because apparently he did something really questionable when he was in college. Now look, we've all done something questionable when we were in college, but he apparently lied about his race in order to get into med school. He claims that because of affirmative action, he was going to be discriminated against from all these med schools, and so in order to get a better opportunity and a better shot to get into med school, he had to lie and pretend that he was black. Now, this happened back in the 90s, and he's writing a book called Almost Black, detailing his experience. So there's the before and after picture of him. His name is Vijay. It is. And so there is the so-called rejected Vijay. And then on the right-hand side, you see the so-called black version of him. He apparently changed his name to Jojo, as if that's not offensive enough. He was a junior at the University of Chicago when he realized he didn't have the grades or the MCAT to get into medical school. According to him, his GPA was 3.1, which isn't high enough to get into med school. And his MCAT was also a score of 31. That ranks him in the 80 to 85th percentile on the test. So it's interesting because he finally got into the St. Louis University, the medical school there. And the school released a statement saying, no, at the time, his test score and his grades were good enough to accept him. His race played absolutely no role. But Vijay is actually completely convinced that his race had something to do with it, although the tables turned on him. Apparently, being black isn't all that it's cracked up to be, according to him. He says, cops harassed me, store clerks accused me of shoplifting, women were either scared of me or couldn't keep their hands off of me, something that I don't believe for a second. What started as a devious ploy to gain admission to medical school turned into twisted social experiments. All right, so I have strong feelings about this, but I want to toss to you guys immediately. Charlie, what do you think? Make your point.
I think this is a pretty shoddy case study for, affirmative action. And the way he went about doing it, he showed two sides of the coin. Hey, maybe I can get into schools easier, which he really couldn't. He just got into school and then
he got into one university.
He got into one. So It doesn't even prove that point. The flip side of it, the discrimination against going into a store, getting pulled over, as he mentioned, those are the things that affirmative action is trying to correct. So it's a shoddy case study. I don't think he put enough time and effort into thinking about it. And if this were a thesis at the University of Chicago, I think he would have graduated with far less than a 3.1. So it just doesn't make sense to me.
Now, I should note that he ended up dropping out of med school. And so real quick,
Shocker.
let me make my point before I go to you, Andy. My biggest issue with those who are so adamant and against affirmative action is that a lot of times they won't take responsibility for their own actions, right? So he won't take responsibility for the fact that he was not talented or smart enough to get into any med school he wanted to get into, so he blamed black people for it, right? Take responsibility for your faults and for your downfalls. You weren't good enough. And apparently, even though you got into med school, it proved that you still weren't good enough because you dropped out, because you are a fucking failure when it comes to this particular topic. He later got into business school and got a business degree at UCLA, whatever. I don't care about that. But again, take responsibility for your own downfalls. Don't blame black people for it. It's so pathetic. Andy.
Yeah, what a real shithead. I mean, he took an opportunity away from somebody else only to squander it later. It's like going to McDonald's at 10:29 in the morning, cutting in line in front of everybody and ordering the last fucking Egg McMuffin and then throwing it away.
Yeah.
I mean, what is in what world does this make any sense? This guy just not only screwed that up, he also just shows that if you can. Oh God! I lost my train of thought there. Obviously, McDonald's. I'm hungry. I'm really hungry with the food.
You should blame black people like you.
Yeah, it's affirmative action that's not allowing me to make jokes correct.
All right, so let's get to the personal question. Have you ever lied on your resume or in an interview in order to get a job you wanted? Drama. Now, if it's a current job that you're working at, you don't have to answer that question. Or you can answer it cleverly. Anyway, I'm just looking out for you guys. Andy, let me start with you.
No, I haven't. I mean, maybe I should, because maybe I would get more job offers or opportunities. Uh-huh. I know you have.
Have I?
Well, I think you told me you did once. On the show, didn't you?
I think I might have, but I actually don't remember what I lied about. Can you remind me?
No.
See, that's how much of a liar I am. I lie so much that I forget. You know, it's interesting because I just recently applied for new teaching positions for journalism, and so I had to revise my cover letter and my resume. And honestly, everything in there is 100% accurate now. But in the very beginning, when I first started trying to get a job, of course you have to lie, because if you don't have experience, no one's gonna hire you. So maybe I didn't lie, but I definitely embellished. There's no question about that.
I guess, when you start getting down to the nitty-gritty of like when you say what your role is and stuff, and if you can add like supervised instead of maybe just got coffee for somebody, maybe that's
Supervised
other coffee getters.
Embellishments.
Yeah,
yes, there's nothing wrong with that.
I always get really nervous that like they're gonna find me out, and then I'm gonna have like a one of those Doogie
Scarlet
Howser
letter.
moments or something, where like
never supervised anyone getting coffee.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
then I'll get thrown out and kicked out of the city and never work again. So.
All right, Charlie, you played safe, but there's Charlie. That's what I want to know.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think I have lied in terms of what I have omitted. Because, for instance, when I was in grade school, I worked at the park. I drove the golf cart around, and to get a job at a golf course, I said I have experience driving a golf cart, which I did. What I didn't tell them is I also had experience losing the golf cart into the pond and hitting the third tree on the right. Next to the baseball diamond. Sorry, Elm Grove Park, that happened. But and I think it's those kinds of things that we leave out. Just in all kinds of jobs, we leave out our failures. We only put our best foot forward. So in that regard, I think we're all kind of lying, and maybe that's my way of dodging this question.
We're all guilty. All right, no, that's fair enough. Well, I want to know if you guys have ever lied on a resume. Comment in the section below. Tell us whether you embellished or if you lied about experience. We do want to hear your stories, so please share them with us, and we will see you soon. France has a huge issue with super skinny models. In fact, they recognize that anorexia and bulimia continue to be a huge problem among teenage girls. So they have decided to ban models that are so skinny that it's perceived as unhealthy. Now, health experts estimate that about 30,000 to 40,000 people in France suffer from anorexia. Most of them are teenagers. In an effort to prevent this, France has banned extremely thin models. So what the hell does that mean? Okay, it's not just some subjective thing. They've actually given measurements that they think is unhealthy. So first, let's hear from the legislation. The activity of model is banned for any person whose body mass index, BMI, is lower than levels proposed by health authorities and decreed by the Ministries of Health and Labor. So before being hired for a job, models will have to present a medical certificate, so a letter from a doctor, indicating that their BMI is at least 18, which, by the way, is so low. My BMI is like 22, maybe 23.
Are we going to compare? Is that what's happening?
I mean, 18 is still extremely thin. Of at least 18, 121 pounds for a height of 5 feet and 7 inches. So I'm 5'3", 5'4", and I'm about that weight. So it's that's very thin. The law is aiming to put people into prison for up to 6 months and a fine of 75,000 euros, that's $82,000, for any agency who actually disobeys this law. What do you guys think about this? Andy, make your point.
I think it's absurd. And I think because, well, first of all, it shows two things. It's very French. Like the French are very French. We are reaffirming that. They love to regulate themselves. They love to regulate their way out of issues. And secondly, they literally have nothing else better going on right now, is like what it seems to be like. The biggest flaw that I could see is that it's difficult when you start to sort of lump everybody into a category based on some sort of scientific method like BMI, which is still sort of proven to be not exactly 100% accurate. You can just be very skinny, not because you're necessarily not eating, it's just because you are just a thin person. And I think the danger is that there's going to be these people who admittedly will be probably like old patriarchs of French nationality and French government who are going to sort of decree on high, that girl is too skinny. I mean, they won't sound like that because they'd be English, but they just, I think, are going to put a blanket over something that really needs to have singular attention on each of the individual issues.
The pendulum could swing in the other direction, and I think that's an interesting point to make. Charlie, what do you think? Make your point.
I think it's sad that French authorities or lawmakers have to step in and actually make a law about this. That means that somebody is employing somebody with that low of a BMI in order to do these things. And I think it's a reflection of the fashion industry in general. Why is an industry that's so creative and makes these incredible I don't know fashion, but everything looks really beautiful and super creative. Why then are you not as creative with body types?
That's a good point.
We are we are so diverse as a people. We like different styles. Why wouldn't we like different body types? And we do like different body types, so let's start seeing more.
I'm seeing a complete shift when it comes to the fashion industry and body types, and that's a good thing. So I think a lot of it's happening organically because of the way the market is responding to it. So if you look at Instagram, for instance, a lot of the boutiques and a lot of the clothing retailers that advertise their stuff on Instagram or have Instagram pages usually use models that are very curvaceous. And so surprisingly enough, I've talked about this on the show, sometimes I look at those pages and I feel like a little inadequate. I'm like, I don't know, I don't have a butt that big. Like, is there something wrong with me? So it's interesting how those images and those messages permeate through society and how they kind of change your perspective on yourself and the perspective on beauty and fashion and all of that. Now, here's the question for the story. Would you rather lose your sex organs for the rest of your life or gain 200 pounds, which is a lot of weight? Charlie?
I would definitely rather gain 200 pounds, maybe even 300 if that's the other end of the spectrum, because I can, eat some things that I enjoy and not lose my sex
It's
organ.
a freaking win-win.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
I'm all about that.
Andy.
Yeah, do you have to keep the 200 pounds on forever, or is it just as soon as you
gain it, you
can lose it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, just gain 200 pounds for a minute, just hang out and work it off. That can go away in, I don't know, a year or two, maybe 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah,
you will never grow back your organs.
Yeah, so that's a good point. There is some regenerative medicine out there, but infancy. So I thought about this a little longer because I was like, what does it mean to lose your sex organs? Does that mean that I just can't reproduce? Because if that's the case, then that's not that bad. But does it mean that I'm going to look like Barbie, where I have no kibbles and bits, or any? Then I don't want that. So if it's the latter, then I'd rather gain the 200 pounds. But losing 200 pounds is so hard. It's the hardest thing in the world. So it would be brutal. It's not that hard. It's not hard for men.
Finding your kibbles and bits.
Yeah, it's true. I want my kibbles and bits. They're important. But yeah, you guys can lose the weight like that.
Then you can compete with the girls on Instagram.
That's true.
You have problems with.
That's a good point. We've come full circle. Anyway, tell us what you guys would rather do. I think it's pretty clear what the answer is, but who knows? You might have a different perspective on this. Comment in the section below, and we will see you soon. In the United States, drugs like magic mushrooms or MDMA are considered controlled substances that are completely banned. In fact, if you're caught with possession of them or if you're caught trafficking these drugs, you could face a very long prison sentence, which is absolutely ludicrous, something that I'm very much against. Well, now I have scientists to back me up. These are scientists Terry Krebs and Paul Ojan Johnson. They have just created an organization known as Emma Sophia in order to raise awareness about these psychedelic drugs and how they're actually not as harmful as people believe them to be. In fact, they could have medicinal values, and as a result, it should be legalized and it should be regulated. Now, Krebs is a neuroscience research fellow, and her husband is actually a clinical psychologist. They're the authors of a new study that was published in the Lancet Psychiatry Journal. Now, Johansson admits to using MDMA and magic mushrooms to treat his own alcohol addiction. So I'm not entirely sure whether or not that is a credible claim to make. I don't know if there are a lot of scientific studies about using these drugs to wean you off an alcohol addiction, but I have read studies about psychedelic drugs helping those who have post-traumatic stress disorder. So it is interesting to see whether or not these drugs can be utilized in a medicinal way, and we obviously need more studies for it. Now, the pair, as I mentioned, have set up a nonprofit organization called Emma Sophia to expand access to quality-controlled MDMA and psychedelics. As you can see, they have created this Indiegogo page, and the crowdfunding page is going to raise, or they're attempting to raise, $30,000 to build a foundation to legalize the drugs. They say the drugs can help addictions and other issues like Parkinson's disease. So lots of really interesting stuff there. Let's cut to a video of them talking about this issue a little more.
I think the culture could benefit from moving a little bit away from alcohol and over to MDMA and psychedelics, which is making your problem more apparent and maybe help you to process and heal.
Now, I think one of the most important things to take away from this, and this is my point to the story, is that whenever you criminalize something, whenever you ban something, it of course creates a black market for it. And because of the black market, you have these unregulated drugs out there that are cut with all sorts of poisons and toxins, and people are unaware of them. So when people are going to Coachella, as they will very, very soon, they're going to be taking MDMA or so-called Molly thinking that it's pure when in reality it's cut with all sorts of dangerous things. So it's much better to legalize it, regulate it, and make sure that people know exactly what they're putting in their bodies should they choose to take it. I think that it's part of individual liberty, and anyone who's against that needs to come up with a better reason for why it makes sense to waste resources in criminalizing these things. Now, Charlie, I'm curious to see if you agree with me or if you have a different perspective. Make your point.
I do agree with you. I think that, well, here it says psychedelic drugs, safe as riding a bike or playing soccer. True, but sometimes you can get hit by a car while you're on your bike. I think the idea of creating these drugs in their purest form and then giving you doses is important, but I think that's just part of it, especially with MDMA and shrooms. You have to stay hydrated. You have to stay hydrated the entire time. That's very important. So you need a guide.
Yeah.
And if you can have a guide, someone who's going to take you around and make sure you're okay, then I think it's very important. And I think I just read an article on veterans experimenting with a lot of these things, and that's significantly helping their PTSD. And who would we be to tell a veteran that after putting their lives on the line for the country that they can't do some shrooms?
That's a very great point. Andy, make your point.
All of that science and good will aside, I would just look at sort of, you know, maybe the subtext of what's going on here too a little bit with the couple is that there could be some confirmation bias here, I want to say.
Yeah.
And also, it just seems a little convenient that maybe they also are trying to push an Indiegogo campaign where they specifically would benefit from this kind of thing getting legalized or regulated. And I think that because of that, it's sort of problematic because obviously, if you are going to want to try to make money off of a thing and you have the ability to say it's safe or not, then you're of course going to give your approval and say that it is safe. And I will say that his name does look like it is also on mushrooms.
I know, it's one of those European names that has a bunch of symbols on it.
Can we see them again? They are stoned. Look at them.
You know what? Do you, booze? Okay, they're not harming anyone.
Well, and that's the only other thing too, which is that I understand that yes, we should make sure that if people are going to be doing it, we should give them the best opportunity to experience that in a safe environment. But I just worry that the psychotropic side effects or intentions of those kinds of things can be more intense than alcohol, depending on the dosage of which you are.
It really does depend on those things, which is why, you know, in the United States, since these are considered controlled substances that might not have any medicinal value, the government stops scientists from actually studying them, and that's a huge issue. We need to study these things more. And look, this is confirmation bias for me as well. I know about magic mushrooms and MDMA, and I thought that they were both great, right? But that doesn't mean that it's for everyone. And the fact that something like that could make me a criminal is fucking ridiculous, right? So I think that regardless of what their agenda is or what their self-interests are, the outcome is going to be a positive one. At least that's my perspective. So here's the personal question. How old were you when you first experimented with drugs and or alcohol? Andy?
Probably 16.
Wow,
when we
you were
started
young.
Drinking.
Ah.
Yeah, we used to do this thing where we were really sly about it too. We would go to my friend's house and his parents had a liquor cabinet and we would steal their liquor, but we could only steal a little amount so they wouldn't notice. So what we would do is we'd take the gin and the whiskey and the tequila and the vodka and the red wine and mix it all into one water bottle. And I will tell you this, I had some seriously bad experiences and I didn't drink for probably a year and a half. So actually maybe that's the best way to get your kids not to drink is to just
let them drink
with alcohol. Yeah.
Charlie, what about you?
I think I was also 16, and yeah, I wasn't.
It's a Midwest, you know.
It's a Midwest thing.
We
It's
didn't
cold.
have anything else to
what
do.
else are you gonna do? Yeah, and I wasn't as intricate as you were. I just stole some alcohol from my parents, my friend's parents, sorry mom, and yeah, it was great. And then I got caught, and then I was more careful.
You were more careful to not get caught. All right, fair enough. I actually was super responsible when I was a teenager in terms of substances, right? So I didn't really drink. I didn't do any drugs at all. I didn't really start experimenting until I kind of had my foot in the door with my career. I had finished college, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm enough of an adult to make smart decisions about experimentation. And so that was when I started experimenting, and I think that was the best situation because I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. I was really educated on what I was about to do. And so I didn't have any bad trips. I didn't have any bad experiences. When it came to magic mushrooms, I mean, that took years for me to even warm up to.
I love that you call them magic mushrooms in their entirety, every time.
I know.
It's kind of
most people just say shrooms.
Right, like magic mushrooms.
I took the magic mushroom.
It's like the brand name.
Yeah. That was actually fairly recent. That happened like a few months ago.
Where'd you do
it? San Diego.
In here.
And I did it
right
at work
now.
right before the point. And for me, it was more, I was interested in like the so-called spiritual experience of it.
Right.
Like people would say that it's a spiritual experience. I'm an agnostic atheist, so I don't believe in religion at all, but I wanted to see whether or not it changed my perspective on life. And I know this is going over, but I'm sure people enjoy this. It gave me a lot of perspective, actually. It made me really appreciative of my life and what I have. And the one thing that I remember vividly was walking past a homeless man who was like about my dad's age. And I had like this severe level of sympathy for him that I'd never experienced before. I don't know, it was just a really different perspective on life. And so I totally believe these scientists when they say it, but as Andy said, it's important to do these types of things in a controlled environment where people aren't going to have a bad trip and do something harmful to themselves. Anyway, that's my story. We want to hear from you guys. How old were you if and when you experimented with drugs and alcohol? And also, what do you think about psychedelics? Do you think that they should be legalized, or do you think it's a good thing that they continue to be criminalized? Comment in the section below, and we'll see you soon. All right, guys, that was a super fun show. I want to thank you guys for both coming on and braving through it. Charlie, you're a brand new panelist, and I want the audience to know more about you, so please go ahead and tell them.
Okay, this is the pitch moment. So, guys, you can check out more stuff from me on @Hollywood on YouTube, Twitter, and actually this weekend we're going to Coachella, so we'll have reports for you all weekend on Coachella.
Fun.
Maybe some weird things will happen.
I'm sure they will. Andy.
Something magical.
Something magical.
I'm Andy Riesmeyer. I'm currently the host of Dweebcast on Aura.tv and also the showrunner of Brown Bag Wine Tasting with William Shatner.
That sounds good. I like brown bag wine tasting.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's the best show I've ever worked on.
That sounds really fun. All right, guys. Well, I'm Anna. You guys can check me out Monday through Friday on The Young Turks. That's youtube.com/The Young Turks. We stream live from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you want to be part of our live audience, please check it out. You can also check me out on Twitter @Ana Kasparian and Instagram Ana Kasparian TYT, because Ana Kasparian was taken by some random person who I'm sure is not named Ana Kasparian. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. We love you guys. Thank you so much for participating. And remember, never be afraid to make your point. Hey everyone, welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Ana Kasparian, and we have two studs on the panel today. I'm gonna get right to it and introduce those studs. In fact, we have a brand new panelist on the show. You guys have never seen him before, but he is actually the host of @Hollywood. His name is Charlie Berens, and he's in for a treat today because I'm gonna ask him some pretty personal and embarrassing questions.
Very personal and embarrassing. I appreciate that.
Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we got to balance out the new with someone that you guys are familiar with. Andy Riesmeyer returns. He's the host of Dweebcast on Aura TV. You guys can check that out. And I'm loving the suit, or at least the jacket. It looks good.
I appreciate it.
I'm telling you, two studs. What am I going to do with this panel? It's too much going on. All right, so we're going to talk about a lot of interesting stories today, including one founder of a revenge porn website who is now paying the consequences of extortion. Also, what the hell is an air shepherd, and how is it going to help animals that could go extinct in the next 10 years? Revenge porn is not necessarily illegal in all states, so it really varies based on where you live. So in California, they have made revenge porn illegal, but in the vast majority of states in the US, it's still legal. And I think that the tides are changing when it comes to that issue, thankfully. But I do want to know what you think, Charlie.
Well, I think, whatever you do in life, you're going to spend a lot of time doing it, whether, it's working at a movie theater or hosting a show or doing revenge porn. And he spent so much time that he found a business, a $30,000 plus business, in doing it. And I just think now he has 18 years to think about how he could have used his time more wisely. There's no excuse for it. And I think if there's a shame in this whole story, it's that it wasn't more publicized, because I think more people who are doing the same thing need to see that there are real consequences for this.
That's definitely a good point. It's interesting because as despicable as he is and as angry about the women along with the images, so people who went to the website could easily harass the women by calling them, finding where they lived, finding what their social media sites were. It was a complete and utter disaster. Now, the part that got him into a lot of trouble is that women, of course, had their lives ruined as a result of this, so they would contact him and beg him to take those pictures down. Well, guess what he did? He would direct them to a different website that he was a founder of, something known as changemyreputation.com, and then he would extort them. He would ask for between $250 and $350 in order for him to take the pictures down. So that's essentially what got him into a lot of trouble. If you're wondering how much money he made from that website, well, from ad revenue, he apparently made about $900 a month. And from the amount of money that women had paid him to take the images down, he made $30,000. So again, he got sentenced to 18 years behind bars because of what he did. And Mindy Kaling's brother is in the middle of a lot of controversy because of something he did when he tried to get into college. We'll give you the details on that. France bans a particular type of model, and also scientists say that psychedelic drugs are not bad, they're actually quite good for you. We'll give you the details on that. But first, let's get started with a story that I feel very passionately about: revenge porn and what the consequences could be if you are involved in a website that has it. So Kevin Bollert is a 27-year-old guy who just got sentenced to a whopping 18 years in prison because he's the founder of a revenge porn website known as yougotposted.com. Now, that website no longer exists because apparently it was involved in some criminal activity. What Bollert would do is he would somehow access nude pictures or videos of women, and then he would utilize those images as revenge porn on his website, but he would also post personal information did face 6 counts of extortion and 21 counts of identity theft. He was found guilty of all charges. Now, I want to know what you guys think about this. It's interesting to have two guys on the panel talk about something like revenge porn. I think the audience is pretty clear on what I think. But Andy, let me start with you. Make your point.
Well, I think as a guy or as a human being, it's obviously this is like really disgusting, and this dude's a total creep. He not only, extorted people out of trying to get the pictures down, but also just to sort of create an environment where you could put someone's photos up, but then also put their information, their details, their Facebook pages. It's just like somebody like this should absolutely be behind bars. I mean, revenge porn is already on its face really gross, for everybody. It's just like a super unethical, illegal. The way that he just sort of even took it to the next level, I think, is just unbelievably
It's amazing
bad.
how he could make a despicable act even
more
worse. Despicable. And by the way,